who better to talk about the Texans than the Texans expert? Uh, we got them taking on the New England Patriots at New
I've been
England.
waiting for this moment.
It seems like, a reversal of traditional roles, I guess. The Patriots
I would say that,
used to
yeah,
always
for
be the
sure.
team. Right now, I think Houston is favored by 7 points. That's a big spread,
number.
but
Big
I'm
number.
going to go on a limb and say Houston will cover. Drake May is making his first start of his career versus the Houston Texans this weekend. What's your take on this, Turtle?
So, honestly, out of all the teams this year that I think came into the year with high expectations, you can make the argument that through 5 weeks, the Texans have underperformed, I think, just as much as any team with high expectations in the league. And let me walk you through this. They're 4-1, so you can say by a record standpoint that they've probably done about on par with what people expected of them. They do have a negative point differential, which again, through 5 games, it's a small sample size. I think that they're at minus 12-point differential. Granted, that one Vikings game kind of outweighs that entire thing, and it turns out the Vikings are a pretty damn good football team. But again, you talk about a team that played on the road in Indy, a divisional opponent. They won that game by 2. They did not cover the spread. They play the Bears, and granted, you could make the argument they should have beat the Bears by 2 or 3 touchdowns, but this seems to be kind of a theme with the Texans is they have an issue with penalties, and they have an issue with being a disciplined football team at times. And when you go into a road game as a favorite and you are a bit of a undisciplined football team, you can let teams hang around. And it looks like the Texans, when they play lower competition like they did against Jacksonville, granted that was a Jacksonville team with their back up against the wall, but they played down to that competition. It was a great win against Buffalo this week. They looked amazing in the first half, and Buffalo's a team that can get out on you quick, and they reversed the roles and got out on Buffalo quick. They had no penalties in the first half of the game against Buffalo. They looked like they had fixed that issue. Second half comes around. They kind of got full of themselves again. 6 penalties in that second half. And it just doesn't look like everything is clicking with Houston at the moment. There's been some discourse about Bobby Slowick, the OC. Thing about Houston is they're very, very stubborn when it comes to running the football. And they will run the football. The problem is they don't run the football really overly well. They're 29th, I believe, in EPA running the ball. And they usually run on first and second down. And this leaves these monstrous third and longs, which granted they have a superhero quarterback in Stroud that bails them out. But I think their average third down distance is the last couple of games have been 7, 7.8, 8.5 on third down distance-wise. And again, it's one of those things that in the NFL, that can tend to regress. Now, granted, C.J. Stroud is a superhuman, a superhero quarterback, and he gets those first downs by just delivering darts under pressure. So granted, this Patriots team is not good. They should move the ball, no problem. I am curious to see how they run the football this week. If they can't run the football, then I could see New England squeezing in, sneaking in the number. It will be an under football game, obviously, if New England were to cover the spread. This game probably goes over if the Texans move the ball. On the defensive side, I'm less concerned about Houston. They are the number 1 scoring defense in the NFL right now, I believe.
And Turtle, I wanted to pose you a question with that. You said number 1 scoring, defense in the league. The pass block success rate for New England 41% so far this year, and you're starting Drake May in this first start against this Houston Texans defense. Do you think that's going to be a point?
Houston is number 1 in pressure rate. Now, granted, we haven't seen the sack numbers from Will Anderson Jr. and Danielle Hunter that I think Texans fans like myself expected. Against the Bears, I think Danielle Hunter had a great game that week. They get pressure. We haven't seen the sack numbers. If they're going to have some sacks, it's going to be this week against this Walmart O-line that the Patriots are trotting out there.
Might be a big week for Will Anderson and Danielle Hunter.
I would like to see it. I think it would be a welcome sight for Texans fans that the defense as a whole has performed overly well. I love where their secondary is at. Kamari Lassiter has come in, and we talk about guys that come in as rookie corners that rookie corners tend to usually struggle a little bit. Kamari Lassiter, as a second-round pick, has come in and played really good football. And Derek Stingley, as long as he stays healthy, is a top 10, 15 corner in the NFL. Now, Texans have some injury. They do have some injury issues. It looks like Christian Harris won't be back for this game. Jimmy Ward got banged up with a groin. So I don't play. He's usually always a guy that's good to be out for at least 4 or 5 games every year. Nico Collins looks like he probably won't play this week off. Without Nico Collins. So I again, as a Texans fan, a name we haven't heard a lot about this year has been Tank Dell. Tank Dell looked great in the preseason, and through 5 weeks, he's kind of been a little bit of an afterthought in this offense. And kind of, I'm not sounding the alarm bells. Like, I'm concerned for Tank himself. Like, he's not the same player he was before he broke his leg last year. I mean, athletically, he looks fine. I think it's more of just an offensive scheme thing, and he's not running those same type of routes he did last year. You've got to incorporate Diggs into this offense, and it's very – Nico Collins is an absolute freak when he's out there on the field. I mean, he's 6'4", 225 and can absolutely move. And I think he's underrated. You don't get a lot of talk about him being a top 5 receiver in the NFL. He certainly looks like it. But without him in the lineup, I'd like to see some more things schemed up for Tank Dell. Again, a lot of NFL teams think would be happy with the top 2 receivers of Diggs and Tank Dell. So I don't think there's any excuses here when it comes to not getting those 2 guys the football. So look, we'll see how the Texans. I'm curious to see how the Texans come out. Like, Christian, I know you went on a limb and say you lay the 7. As someone who's watched this team through 5 weeks, I think it's hard for me to go and get there and say, like, I'm going to lay the Texans with 7 points because of how, I'd say, inconsistent that they've been.
Sure.
And
I certainly don't think I'm going out and taking New England plus the 7 points either, though.
No.
So
in Turtle,
from an unbiased perspective, probably a pass for me.
Question on just how they're moving the ball. I mean, Daria Gumbawale has been getting the carries. Joe Mixon's still injured. Do you think that's been I mean, we're seeing C.J. Stroud really air it out. Do you think that's because of questions on the offensive line, the inefficiency to really be able to get big plays in the run game? And Dameon Pierce is still out.
Well, they had the same issue last year. They're running the ball. It's nothing new. And if you watch any of Bobby Sloak's press conferences, he talks about the importance of using the run to set up the pass. Well, I think the problem is like, I'm totally fine with using the run to set up the pass. The problem is when you're banging your head against a brick wall if you burn 2 downs every single time you're out there, at some point you've got to try something different than running your head into a brick wall, so to speak. And look, that first game with Mixon against Indianapolis, the run game looked like they had something going. Mixon had about 150 yards rushing. And then Mixon went out, and I got to give credit to Dare Ngubawale for stepping in, and it looks like he's very much the guy that they trust. He's a very reliable player. He's great in pass pro. He can catch the football. We've seen that over the last couple of weeks. But he's not a guy that's going to, he's not a Mixon-style guy that can go out and get you 100 yards. He's just not that guy. Cam Akers has showed some flashes. But, again, he's kind of a liability in pass pro. He's not usually out there on 3rd down because of that. And Dameon Pierce, Nick Caserio mentioned he was going through some stuff last year that was kind of like, no one really knew about. And then he's been dealing with this hamstring issue. I don't expect Dameon Pierce to, if he even is back, to be a factor. He's in a proverbial doghouse, not for anything that he did, but it's a house money if Dameon Pierce kind of gives you anything at this point.
Yeah.
Which is look, if I'm the Texans, I might be making some calls to teams that need a running back and maybe floating Dameon Pierce's name out there. He's not a great scheme fit for the outside zone. And you talk about a team that looks like they need a running back, at least some depth at that position. The Dallas Cowboys,
Always.
If the Cowboys want to part ways with a third or fourth round pick to get Dameon Pierce, he's a much better fit for that offense, in my opinion. I love Dameon Pierce. He's an awesome guy, and I'd be sad to see him go because I love him so much as a player and as a dude. But I think he would fit in great with that team. Just like a little tangent there. But yeah, again, what I want to see from the Texans this week that they haven't showed all year is I want to see them run the football with consistency, despite having some, I would say, average running backs, backup running backs in there. I want to see the O-line get some push in the run game. The interior offensive line. Look, this is the number one invested team in draft capital and money in the offensive line. You've got a top left tackle in Laramie Tunsil who gets paid a boatload of money, who leads the league in false start penalties. He had 0 last week by the grace of God somehow. I don't know if Titus Howard will be back this week, but he's highly paid too and hasn't been great this year. And then you've got young dudes inside with Kenyon Green and Kenyon Green and Drew Scruggs, who, quite frankly, Kenyon Green was drafted in the first round. They traded back, had a chance to draft Kyle Hamilton. They traded back and took Kenyon Green, and through 3 years, Kenyon Green has struggled mightily.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you've got Drew Scruggs as a second-round pick. Kenyon Green's a first-round pick. Laramie Tunsil, through contracts and trade, you've given up a lot of resources there. Titus Howard is paid like a top 15 right tackle. You've got a lot of resources on that O-line. I want to see something click there.
Yeah, that was going to be my major question for you guys is definitely the left guard position.
Yeah.
I think Kendrick Green, first-year guy.
Kenyon Green is in his third year now.
How about his backup? Is his backup Kendrick?
His backup is Kendrick Green. He's the former Steeler who's kind of an undersized guy. I would say he's a good scheme fit for the offense, but he struggled mightily in Pittsburgh. And Pittsburgh fans were not happy with him, and they were happy to see him go. So again, that's not a guy I think that he's not going to get any tick this week, barring injury. But again, not a guy that I trust to step in there and play. Shaq Mason, we just extended him to a new contract, former Patriot. He's been okay. He was good last year. He's been a little bit shaky this year. Again, that for amount of resources the Texans have invested in this offensive line, a definite underperformance, and quite frankly, it needs to be addressed if the Texans want to get to where they want to go as a football team.
Yeah. So I know Blake Fisher has definitely been getting reps at tackle. I thought he was going to get some guard reps with Green struggling there. So that's the one thing I'm interested in with Houston. The only other question I had for you was, of all the teams in the AFC South, is there one that gives you cause for concern in a matchup with Houston, or is it your division to lose in your eyes?
It looks like our division to lose, and that's just because the rest of the AFC South is, I think. Now, Indy, I think Indy can be frisky just because they've got
Flacco.
With Joe Flacco.
Something about
just because Joe Flacco. Yeah, talking about Flacco, man, Flacco is back in the fold. And to be honest, I know this might be a little bit of a tangent as well, but if you're the Miami Dolphins and you went into this year with Skylar Thompson as your only plan at backup quarterback, when you had guys like Joe Flacco and Gardner Minshew available, they have nobody to blame but themselves, in my opinion. Because Flacco looks like he can still step in and perform really well, and credit to him. But yeah, nobody else in the AFC South really gives me any fear, other than possibly Indy. But I still think the Texans are a much better team than Indianapolis. I think if they were to play on a neutral field, I think the Texans are 3.5 points better than Indy at the bare minimum, even with Flacco at quarterback. So Jacksonville is in the dumps. I don't expect Doug Peterson to be here for long. And Tennessee. Now, Tennessee's an interesting one. If Tennessee wants to make the choice to end this Will Levis experiment rather quickly and go to our buddy Mason Rudolph. Now, I'm not the biggest Mason Rudolph fan, but I do think he's a little bit less stupid than Will Levis.
Yeah.
And again, they're not a better football team than the Texans are, but if we're going to talk about like a 1-game sample, if the Titans played Mason Rudolph instead, it looks like he's got better command of that offense. But again, I think this is a one-horse race for the AFC South, and really what I'm looking for the Texans to do is address those concerns along the offensive line. I think they desperately need Christian Harris back. The Texans live in nickel and dime packages. They play 2 linebackers 99% of the game. If you look at the snap shares for their linebackers, right now it's Henry To'oTo'o and Azeez Al-Shire. They play the whole game, and then maybe Neville Hewitt gets 1 snap, and they live in nickel and dime. Jalen Petre's out there for every snap, and I think that's why we've seen some teams have success running the ball against Houston. Another thing that the Patriots actually do okay is run the football. And if the Texans aren't getting Christian Harris back this week, I could see New England having some success running the football just because Texans play with 2 linebackers for basically the whole year. So if New England can do that, they might have a puncher's chance in making this a little bit of a dogfight. One guy I'd like to see the Texans maybe kick tires on is Devin White. He just got released by the Eagles.
Yeah.
They need depth at linebacker desperately. And I don't know the extent of Christian Harris's calf, hamstring, soft tissue injury he's dealing with. He got put on IR before the season. They still haven't activated him. I wouldn't mind kicking tires on Devin White if he wants to come in as a depth piece, and maybe you get, instead of living in nickel and dime for whole games, you can maybe get Devin White to play 20 snaps for you. Wouldn't mind kicking the tires on him.
Turtle, I think this entire game comes down to rookie quarterback Drake May, an offensive line that's given up a 47% pressure rate to their quarterback, and that was Jacoby Brissett. And now you're going to throw a rookie out there in a terrible situation with a team that's not going anywhere. I mean, I don't think it's a good decision by New England to be playing him right now, but I understand it because I don't know. There's a chance that he could get hurt with how bad that offensive line is playing 47% pressure rate. That's almost half the dropbacks you're getting pushed out of the pocket, and you got a dude in the backfield.
Against the team with the number 1 pressure rate in the NFL.
It's not
against the defensive head coach.
I think the Texans run away with this.
Granted, Drake May, he'll give you a little bit more from a mobility standpoint. He's definitely got more of a live arm, I'd say, than Jacoby Brissett at this point. Look, it's worth a dartboard throw. I think New England's going to run the ball a lot, especially if the Texans are giving them 2 linebacker nickel and dime looks the whole game. They're going to run the rock, and that can shorten the game. Look, if you're looking for a gambling angle in this game, I definitely think you play the under, if anything. Again, I think the total's at probably 37.5 around there. I don't know what the exact number is off the top of my head. But look, 37.5 is a key number in the NFL.
Oh, it's up to 38 right now. So
38. All right, I still like the under there just because of the inefficiency the Texans have shown on offense, and they also themselves, despite being unsuccessful at it a lot of the time, like to run the football. I think New England's going to run the football a ton. That's going to shorten the game. I lean under there. I mean, I could see the Texans winning this game 20-7, personally, or even 13-23 still gets you there, something along those lines. I don't see the Texans putting up 30+ this week, barring a bunch of weird stuff happening like turnovers. And this game's going to be a short one with New England wanting to run the football, Texans wanting to run the football. There's going to be a lot of tick-tock of that clock going. So
sure. Yep. Should be Texans taking care of business. We shall see.
One can hope.
One can hope. Just also want to shout out your kicker, Kaimi Fairbairn. First team All-Pro by my estimations as of right
and
now.
Amazing this year. I think the only kicker that's been better is Brandon Aubrey from the Cowboys. But from a clutch standpoint,
spread
Kaimi's been awesome. Kaimi has been awesome this year. So
absolutely.